Welcome to Identity Inside Out, Getting ID Right, a special InnovationOz.com podcast series brought to you by SailPoint. The last 2 years have seen unparalleled forces drive change. The setting of an unprecedented stage for a work-from-anywhere culture, coupled with an equal evolution of digital services and an ever-evolving, sophisticated cyber threat landscape. The corresponding response to this shift has been a continued focus on complying with the ASD Essential 8 and amendments to the Critical Infrastructure Act, imposing tighter guidelines and increasing cybersecurity requirements. While technology is an enabler, focus is renewed on facilitating change without impact. In this podcast series, we explore the controversies, perils, and opportunities that face industry in the midst of change, and how the organizations today are going to secure their virtual borders against the attacks of tomorrow.
Welcome to Identity Inside and Out, Getting ID Right, an InnovationOz.com podcast series with SailPoint. In today's episode, National Digital Identity, we're talking to Victor Dominello, the New South Wales Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government, and also Gary Savarino, Identity Strategist at SailPoint. Welcome to both of you. Minister Dominello, thank you for joining us. I'd like to start with you. New South Wales is without doubt, an exemplar when it comes to identity as being playing a central role in your government service delivery and the experience of New South Wales citizens when it comes to accessing government. There's a lot of work that's gone into building this. What can you tell us about the journey, and are there a couple kind of key things that helped it all come together?
Yeah, thanks, Corrie. The journey is not straightforward. The journey is not fast. And it's taken us in New South Wales, in terms of true acceleration, I would say the last 7 years on really hard yards. It requires executive sponsorship. I was that sponsor inside a cabinet, but I was then in turn given a license from the premiers, Berejiklian and Perrottet, to actually do the deep reform that was required. And it requires money. Otherwise, it's just rhetoric. And if you've got those things in play, then you've got a chance at rewiring that very complex system that is government.
So is there a point when you've got those sort of, there's champions, there's budget assigned, because it is such a long road, is there a point where it starts to pay dividends that people go, oh, I see how important this is, that helps, I guess, propel the journey forward? Is there a way you can see early signs?
Yeah, I think we had sort of two flashpoints for us. The first was obviously the metrics that we were getting through service centres, because instead of going to an old RTA site and sitting in plastic chairs and having a terrible experience for half a day, we completely turned that inside out. We had a great digital experience through the back end as well. They didn't need to see the clunky drive system, but we made sure it was pretty fast. So that was the beginning. The second big epoch, as it were, was the digital app. So before 2018-19, we had a standard government garden variety app with about 40,000 people on it. We then said we're going to have to really have a world-class app to put the digital driver's license, a form as an identity document on it. And after the pandemic, we've gone from 40,000 on the app to now 77%.
I'll come to you in a second, Gary. I just want to go back to one of the things that sort of in any discussions around identity, and they've been in this country for a long time in different guises, is the beauty is that when you've got centralised identity, then you can access things easily. But on the same token, you have things that are centralised and people are concerned about privacy, and there is a big trust exchange. So how did you tackle that? With that 77% of people on the app as an example, how was that value exchange and the typical kind of reservations about, a centralised identity? How do you tackle that?
Well, it's a really good question because the normal trajectory to any digital adoption applied even with the digital driver's license. So we launched it. We did the pilots in 1819, launched it, and we rapidly got to about 20% the early adopters, as you would in most cases. Then it pretty much plateaued, a very small crawl, slow crawl from about 20 to 24%. Pandemic hit. Then we required QR codes. We used the same platform for Dine and Discover vouchers, border passes, and the like. And then we saw a huge uptake after that. And I think the reason that we have seen a surge is A, obviously it was required, but B, the ease of use. So when people find something very easy to use, they'll adopt it. Now, remember, we had a breach in relation to service. Now, we turned that around. We were transparent about it. We fixed the problem, apologised, learnt from the mistakes. But the adoption is still, moving up. And it goes to show if you've got that transparency, if you've got that great user experience, you can overcome, in your words, you build that privacy credit as well.
Gary, just coming to you, obviously the sort of simplicity and the ease of use, do you see that with customers and their customers, that reducing friction builds trust?
Absolutely. I think so many parallels that can be compared to the efforts of Minister Dominello to the private sector as well. Many organisations that, embarking on and continue to embark on their digital evolution. If we think about what really drives that is we want to simplify, we want to drive a great user experience, and we want to deliver that securely as well. I think interestingly, the stats that you mentioned, Minister, around the adoption of the app, I think at times, necessity drives that adoption as well. And I think having that foundation in place, prior to the pandemic hitting, provided New South Wales citizens with an avenue to interact with government in an easy way. I'm a big user of the app. I was probably one of those early adopters of the digital driver's license. It's made my life a lot easier. I only carry a mobile phone now, so I kind of don't need to use the wallet anymore. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's the way things are going. But I guess in terms of being able to continue that digital evolution that organisations are seeing. There's so many things to consider. Security is absolutely a big part of that, as well as reducing that friction. And there's a journey that people need to be taken on to appreciate ultimately what they're going to get out of that experience.
I might just go back. I mean, this is probably said all the time, but the state and federal, we are one country. I think federal government obviously has different challenges in the sorts of digital front door and the types of complexity, etc. But when you see such vast differences, I guess, in the way that, say, New South Wales citizens experienced government versus the journey that MyGov, and there's obviously a task force at the moment to look at it really critically in terms of being fit for purpose into the future. Without sort of asking you to comment specifically, but are there some easy things that the federal government could be looking at now to start showing a better kind of experience for citizens?
Is that Gary or me, Corrie?
That's you, Victor Dominello.
Okay. Look, I think the federal government are definitely on that journey. And obviously, I've spoken to Minister Shorten and Mr. Gallagher and Mr. O'Neill, and it's a really good relationship that's forming between us and the feds, because we realise, New South Wales is definitely ahead, but the feds are next in the queue. So if we can collaborate together, and the typical example I give is, wouldn't it be a great experience, and again, a trust builder, if me as the customer says, look, Victor, I like my driver's license in my service app, but I move around the country all the time. I also want my driver's license in my MyGov app. And likewise, Mr. Shorten, I would like my Medicare in my service app. Once we start doing things like that, and because as Bill said so eloquently, Australians are not interested in old colonial borders. They just want seamless service delivery. They don't care whether it's the federal, state, local. They just want seamless service delivery. And in the digital age, we should be able to provide it. Now, if the feds and us can show what good looks like through a good collaboration, then I would have thought with the feds' leadership, that will then be a great template for other states and territories to quickly adopt.
If I can, I've got some questions, I guess, around that. Doing it at the state levels, I guess one thing federally, the challenge becomes, quite a bit bigger in terms of bringing, Australian citizens on board with that journey. What are your thoughts around, how do we ensure that there is trust within the citizens for the adoption of a federal sort of digital service? To ensure that, number one, it's going to deliver something that's usable. I guess that's the key. And that's one thing about the New South Wales app is that there is good functionality. People are getting value out of it. At a country level, how do we, bring citizens on that same journey?
Well, you're right, Gary. We need to demonstrate use cases. So, for example, with a digital driver's license, you pointed it out immediately, and it was the same use case for me. As soon as I had that digital driver's license on my phone, my wallet stayed at home. My physical wallet stayed at home. I've never used it since. And that means I'm not losing this wad of plastic cards because now pretty much I put everything on. So that's that real world use case. The feds would need to find something else and then demonstrate how this improves your life, make sure it's easy to use. And more importantly, then start working with industry, because it's one thing to go G to C, but and even G to B, but where the big value proposition in relation to identity and credential is B to B and B to C. That's where there's a huge productivity play for our country. And if the feds can establish that, then that Australia's well framed this decade and the one ahead.
One of the things that's part of some of, I guess, the discussions at a federal level, well, actually across any identity, is about including people. We see digital divides everywhere in lots of different ways in terms of access to internet, etc. When we start to centralise, identity, and I've seen some of the New South Wales roadmaps where access and inclusivity are really important. What are the things that we have to maintain top of mind to make sure that we can account for every citizen?
Well, in New South Wales, Corrie, it's opt-in. And that was the same with digital driver's license. We never said you must have it. And already, as I said, we've got 77% adoption. And I imagine that will probably plateau at around 85%, maybe a little bit higher, because there's always going to be a cohort of the community for whatever reason, whether they not comfortable, not confident, or just don't trust it for whatever reason, will never adopt. So to your point, we always need to have non-digital channels for those. And that's why we got service centres as well. My mum is a classic example. Like, she will never feel comfortable or confident using a digital driver's license. So there's always going to have an ability to go to a physical service centre for her to transact. So I think as long as we have that in mind, we will get to where we need to be. I've got no doubt we'll get to a point in probably a generation, like with the Opal card, where pretty much there's complete saturation, where you have a universal adoption. But we're in that twilight zone right now. So I think we're going to have to play on that, particularly in relation to ID and credentialing over the next decade.
And Gary, this is something I know you and I have talked about as well. When you're talking about culturally and language diversity, you're talking about taking, like you say, there's customer service centres account for different languages, etc., and replicating that into like digital, all those other things we need to think about. Gary, that would be the same with customers and partners as well.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think when we talk about, the adoption of these digital services, and Minister touched on, that I guess it'll take a generation, before we see, that saturation potentially around adoption of digital services. The older generation's less inclined to opt into those digital services. But I think also, one of the things that needs to be considered as part of, digital adoption is looking at, the diverse, population that we have in this country when we look at, names and languages as well. Myself, for example, my legal name is not Gary. I've got a very traditional Italian name. And it's even using, finding challenges with using, digital voice services for name recognition and things like that. So I think there's so many boundaries that need to be, crossed in terms of broad adoption, even, names where people have two names as their first name as well. So just having systems that recognize that. So I think it takes a while, and it takes a while across the board in order to have, systems overall mature to the point where we're able to ensure that there is, as much inclusiveness as possible that caters to the specific needs of citizens as well.
Minister, you are you're finishing up in your role at the next election, but I know that there's sort of very sophisticated plans around identity in place. What will we see from New South Wales in the roadmap for 2023?
Oh, it's just so exciting, Corrie. When people look at service and are happy with the app now, I just say to them, in my humble opinion, I rate this service app right now as being in year 8. Once we get the digital identity and credentialing, then we get into high school. And then by the end of the decade, we are at university. We've just started the journey because I can see what's in play, whether it's the education wallet, whether it's the health app that we're going to start building out, that will again be critical to identity because that needs to be trusted as well. There are just so many things in play. And then once you then build out that ecosystem, that's when I think we get to that truly university level in terms of the app, where it is most ubiquitous in its use and interchangeable between business to business and business to client in terms of the use. In terms of the rollout next year, because we're leading the world on this, you can have a digital identity, and there are already a number of products in the market, but to combine both in a decentralized way, that is both identity and verifiable credentials in one-stop shop, that has, to our knowledge, not been done before in a decentralized way. And if we can land that next year, again, we lead not just the nation but the world. So the roadmap is, I've got the betas on my phone. I should have strong biometric on my phone, and together with the other people on the pilot by early March. I've already got cabinet approval to start preparing a bill. In May next year, a draft bill will go for consultation. Because we've got to get the rules of engagement right, because, again, no one's done this before. So there's got to be sanctions in place for people and serious sanctions for people that have, failed to adhere to the rules in relation to identity and credentials. That bill will go for consultation. Following the consultation, that will hopefully go to cabinet, and then by about October next year, we'll have a bill in Parliament. And then at that point, and between now and then, we're consulting with the industry in relation to use cases so that there's early adoption, so that when the bill is passed, we can start rolling it out. So, for example, a classic example, which is a topic at the moment, is renters. They hand out way too much personal information when they apply for rent. Arguably, we could work with that industry to say, well, why wouldn't you use digital identity as a way of saying, I'm not going to give you a copy of my driver's license. I'm not going to give you a copy of my passport. I'm not going to give you a copy of my birth certificate. The New South Wales digital ID is all you're going to get, and that basically prevents you seeing any personal information.
Yeah, and I guess that's such a big topic there around, how often people are having to, provide their driver's license for organisations. They take copies of it, Medicare card, passport details as well. The use cases there will be plentiful. To have a single verifiable identity that can be provided is going to, mitigate the need for organisations to store so much personal information about its customers as well.
Yeah,
it's big reform, really big reform that's about to happen next year. And as I think the Mandarin wrote a story about it, mate, I like their analogy. They said that we're pouring the concrete for the foundations before the election. Before I leave, I'm making sure that we pour the concrete for the foundations. But then, it's the architecture's there. It's just there, ready to build.
Can I just ask, because, Minister, I think, you've always been very sort of collaborative with the industry, government, etc. Gary, in the conversations that you're having, what's happened from New South Wales in terms of, identity, etc. Does that help kind of provide context of the conversations you're having with customers, like what good can look like? And it helps kind of pave the pathway in terms of the power of identity.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I guess, per the work that Minister has been doing with digital transformation within New South Wales. Every organisation is on a similar path. Again, so many parallels in terms of taking people along the journey, getting executive, endorsement and buy-in to the initiatives, as well as aligning to use cases as well. What's happened really with, if we look over the last couple of years with the explosion of digital transformation or digital evolution, given, the transformed workforce, again, I guess the one thing that accelerated adoption as well of the app was given that, I guess people needed a way to interact with government services in an easy way. Very similar within, the private sector today as well. And identities really is the linchpin to ensure that there is security around all those services as well. So much access, so much information that is out there. The common theme for a lot of conversations today is, number one, know where your critical data is, know where your customer data is, and know who has access to it. So I'm sure it's no different for the Minister as well, and the efforts around the app and New South Wales customer services.
Minister Dominello, you have a huge legacy that you will be leaving, and concrete poured from the sounds of it for whatever happens next year, which is great. We always like concrete being poured. There's such great stuff that's been done, and I'm sure it changes the course of the way that digital service delivery will happen right across the country. And so congratulations for everything that's been achieved during your time.
Sorry. So team effort, but I'm very proud of the same.
But driving through, that's smashing down doors, it's a really important role. So congratulations. Gary Savarino, thank you so much. Looking forward to talking to you both again in 2023, but thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Corrie. And thanks, Minister.
Thanks, Corrie. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this Identity Inside Out, Getting ID Right podcast, brought to you by SailPoint. For more, keep tuning in to innovationoz.com/podcasts or visit sailpoint.com.